The superlative degree for adjectives shows the difference among three or more things. For example, if we have a melon, we can say the melon is big. The melon is big. And with two things, if there are two things, let's take the example of a plum. We can say that the melon, we can put the over here, the melon is bigger, like for two things are there, means number one is melon, the other one is the plum. The melon is bigger than the plum. We can say that this thing is comparatively bigger than this one, and then we are using over here the comparative degree of adjectives that is meant to be for two things. Once we compare two things, we use comparative degree. Similarly, the melon is the biggest, or we can say the melon is the biggest of the three. Which one is the third thing? If we have three things, we have a melon, and we have a plum, and then we have a grape. So we have three things. Number one is melon, number two is the plum, and number three is the grape. So once we compare the three things, so over here the three things are available. The melon is the biggest. As I said, if we have three things, we have a melon, a plum, and a grape. In that case, the melon is the biggest, or the melon is the biggest of the three things. And we may write it also like this: the grape is the smallest of the three things. So this is in that case, once we have three things, then we have to construct this superlative degree, that is three or more than three things involved. So once we have the involvement of three or more than three things, then we use this sort of structure. Adjectives like this one, for example, the grape is the smallest. This is the adjective that is the superlative degree. So the grape is the smallest. This is the smallest. If we have a plum, a melon, and a grape, then the grape is the smallest, whereas the melon is the biggest. So these two are the examples of superlative adjectives or superlative degrees of the adjectives. Now, adjectives that are of two syllables or longer in form, the superlative degree is going to be totally different. We are going to develop them in a different manner or differently. Let's take the example of adjective expensive. Expensive has three syllables. Expensive. So it has three syllables. Expensive in the comparative form is going to be more expensive. More expensive. So this is the comparative degree. And likewise, if we look at the difference between two things, we use this. And if we look at the difference among three things, as mentioned earlier, we will be using the difference between three things or more than three things, if we look at the difference between the difference among three things and more than that, we use the word expensive to describe a noun, then we use the most expensive. This is going to be used for describing nouns, and this degree is going to be called superlative, whereas this was for comparisons and we call it comparative degree of adjective, and it is used for comparing two nouns, whereas this is used for more than three or more than three nouns. Once we want to describe three nouns or more than three nouns, then we will be using the most expensive. The melon cost rupees 300 and the plum was about rupees 40, and the grape, well, we have purchased it in a bunch that cost rupees 200 a kg. So this grape might be a few pesos or coins in its cost. So we'll write it like this: the melon is the most expensive of the three things. So this will be used like this: the melon is the most expensive of the three things. Or we may write like this: the grape is the most cheap or the cheapest. Rather, we will be using cheapest in that case, but we are not focusing on that. Rather, we will be focusing on the most expensive. Once we have got more syllables, then expensive. So over here the problem is with two or more than two syllables. If there are two or more than two syllables, then we will be using the most expensive for superlative and more expensive for comparative. So the melon is the most expensive of the three things, and we may write it: the melon is more expensive than the plum. We may write it like this: the melon, this will be for comparison, is more expensive than the plum. So this is used for comparative two nouns, means the plum and the melon. So for that we use comparative degree. Now we have some rules for superlative degrees, and how can we develop them? Let's have a look at these. There are three different ways to make the superlative degree or superlative form. Number one is if a word is one syllabic or one syllable in length, then we add est. We only add est for superlative degree if there is one syllable in a word, in an adjective. So we will be using one example, that is hard. Hard becomes the hardest. If a word is one syllabic in length, then we add est to the end of the word. This is the word hard. We'll be adding est to the end of this word and it becomes hardest. And we use the article the. Hard becomes the hardest. Two syllables ending in y, if there are two syllables and they are ending in y, then y is converted to I. It gets converted to I. Busy becomes busiest. So this y is converted to I. This y is converted to I. So busiest. Noisy, over here we have got y, and this y it gets converted into I. It becomes noisiest. And before, as I said, we have to put the article the noisiest or the busiest. And for long words, two syllables or more, two or more syllables. If there are long words having two or more than two syllables, there is one example is difficult. Difficult is actually having three syllables. Difficult. Difficult. It has three syllables. So we'll be using the most difficult for that. If the word is comfortable, which has got four syllables, comfortable. So it has got four syllables. We say the most comfortable. There are also some irregular adjectives such as good and bad. To make the superlative from good, use the best, and for bad, use the worst. Also, far becomes the farthest. In this case, we have to add the article the before these words.